ridiculous wig.
It's not a wig. Mifa, they sent me the latest Mifa Tango. It takes two to tango, so they sent me three. 1, 2, 3. They're all different colours. I don't know if those are the only colours they do, but we have brown, olive, and black. You can take your pick, and maybe they'll do a pink one as well for the girl next door.
You sexist bastard.
Quite an interesting speaker, because Mifa seem to be absolutely geared now. Well, the gear that I've been getting from Mifa have been geared towards actually going out and camping, actually an outdoor lifestyle. So not just pure, oh, I've got a speaker, I'll listen to it anywhere. Very much made for going outdoors. So we've got a speaker that's quite almost identical in setup to the Tribit Micro 2, except this seems to be about twice the price. As far as I can see at the moment, I can only get it on AliExpress, about 90 quid or $110. So about the twice the price at the moment, the Tribit Micro 2. So what do you get for the extra money? Quite a bit, actually. It does actually come in some very expensive looking packing. I don't know how much this has cost them, but not an insignificant amount of the budget, I would say. So quite a nice, posh looking box. It's going to give you a good feel immediately. Inside that box is not a speaker. It's a rugged, like handy travel bag thingy, which will have all your accessories and a speaker. Yes, we do get accessories with this outdoor lifestyle mono. So what we got a passive radiator, and a 43mm woofer. What does that look like? Here is one I took off earlier. 43mm woofer, passive radiator. That's an identical setup really to the Tribit Micro 2. It's a 10 watt speaker. It's a 10 watt speaker. Are you getting what I'm saying? Quite similar, except this is heftier and obviously has more features because it's for outdoor living. That's what they're trying to tell you. So the headlines are, we've got a 1/4" thread. That means you can screw it straight onto a tripod or anything that takes what is quite a standard screw size for accessories, especially in the audio and photography world, if it comes to that. It's IP67. It's dustproof, quite handy when you're going out and you're in the desert and stuff like that and you're charging around on your camel. You're not going to get dust in there. And it's IP67, 6 dustproof, 7. You can submerge it in up to 1 meter of water for 30 minutes. It's well waterproof. The only thing you'd think, oh, something like that is bound to float, but no, mine did not float. It floated for about 15 seconds and then it sunk. I mentioned it comes with accessories. So we do get this handy little clip. It did strike me, if I look at the form factor on that wouldn't it be nice if that was some sort of ratchet and that lifted up and lifted down, but that doesn't, although it does have 4 like Allen key type screws there. So you could remove that in a hurry, I assume, but what they do give you is this kind of metally feeling clip. It goes like that. So it's bendy on a spring. You do that, you could catch your finger, be very careful. But the idea is then you can use that to hook in there and then hook it to, be careful which way round you've got, that way round, and then you can hook that onto something and secure it with the thread. And indeed, you don't have to use that. You get a strap. This strap is a lot easier to use than the one I got with my Marshall Middleton. And I'll show you how it's a lot easier than the thing where you got to screw it in and you got to line it up and use 3 different, then it was ridiculous. I just got to get this one off. Spring and then, right, then spring is sprung. That comes off. And for our strap, which by the way, is you get the right color for whatever color speaker that you get, your Mifa Tango, and you can literally just thread that through there. And that's just a hook-in style. So you could say, well, maybe you'd like it slightly more secure, but that's actually quite secure because it's got a lip there, and that's not really going to come off. Although technically, if you really was messing about and doing something serious on your camel, it may do. But I'm even trying to get that off, and it's not coming off. So that is pretty secure and very, very easy to use. So you do get those accessories. And do you know what? If you've got to find it in the dark, you can find it in the dark. Do you know why? It's because it's got a torch as well. These are camping accessories, and that's why you're getting all these add-ons, which is obviously going to be part of the price, and why you'd have to consider you could get something like the Tribit Micro if you want that sort of form factor, with the same sort of driver setup, but you could also get this. So we're gonna have to see what it sounds like. I know, I've done this before. I know it's all about what it actually sounds like. I'm just giving you the headlines because you're paying for a lot of these features. So you got a torch, and by the way, that's 200 lumens. It's reasonably bright. Oh, I didn't even see that works without even having the speaker on, because I just turned the speaker on. So it has its own on-off button. Oh, and it has an SOS flashing facility apparently. It's said to be shockproof, which is handy. So I don't know exactly what that means when they say shockproof. Well, it certainly didn't break the speaker doing that, but I don't know how far could you drop it. I don't know. But in the marketing, when I read it, it said shockproof, ambient temperature, minus 20 to plus 40. So you're pretty much covered there. Although it can get a little bit hotter in the desert, assuming you're not in the desert, it's pretty much going to cover you anywhere. It's got TWS. You can pair two of these, and I have done that together in TWS, and they are locked into TWS. You turn one off, both turn off. You turn both on, they will remember they were wireless locked and go back to stereo mode. If you wanted to do more than two, you've got party ad mode, what they're called in, and that means you can do over 100 of these. I'm not sure that you would put 100 of these in your backpack, and you know, that's probably overkill. I've said that before with the JBL. Has anyone, I mean, what's the most JBLs you've ever put together? Tell me in the comments, because it helps the algorithm. But you can add up to, well, more than 100. I don't know why they don't tell you exactly how many. It's like JBL, they just say 100 plus. And I haven't even come to the end of the features. I know, 40 minutes in, and more features that are not on the Tribit Stormbox Micro 2. And that other one is something that a lot of you do like, and it's going to be especially handy if you're going camping and your phone has run out of juice. Because, and by the way, you can use it as a power bank as well. Two-way USB-C. It's got a micro SD card slot. You can actually play your music straight off the device itself. That's pretty much the features. But if it sounds like a bag of broken nails, you're probably going to pass over unless you just want a torch. I mean, then it's a bit expensive just for a torch. Let's have a look at the frequency response measurements just to get some sort of idea what it may sound like.
On axis versus 45 degrees. Obviously, as soon as you turn it off axis, you're going to lose some of the highs. But overall, the frequency response actually stays quite stable. The low end and the mids, there really isn't much change on a speaker that says it knows which way it's oriented. What we do see is quite a slant upwards. We know that means it's going to be on the bright side with a standout 4 kilohertz peak. And in terms of the bass, at all volumes running off from 200 hertz, that's quite high into the upper bass for the roll-off. So that's going to add even more to the perception that this is a bright speaker.
So there are multiple ways you can use a speaker, and a feature that I did forget to tell you about was it's one of those speakers like the Bose Flex where it knows, is it on axis, is it off axis, and it can, they say, change its DSP to the orientation that you have that speaker in. Because obviously, whether you're facing the driver or not facing it, it alters, especially the highs, how you're going to hear that sound. I did the measurements there, 45 degrees and on axis. 45 degrees, I think, is always a fair measurement because it's a halfway house between how's it going to sound flat and how's it, obviously, like that, you're going to reinforce the bass. It becomes part of the speaker. Once it's on, say, a table just like this, you're going to get bass reinforcement that you're going to miss when if you're hanging it from a tree or something like that. But if it's 45 degrees, the way you listen is in between on axis, where it's going to sound brighter. Obviously, you're more on axis with the driver. And then even if they say with the DSP, you can see it 45 degrees. And indeed, if it's flat on its back, you're going to get less of those highs. That's just a fact, no matter what they're doing with the DSP. But the rest of the frequency response looks quite linear in terms of how you've oriented it. It has seemingly kept the same sort of frequency response. But clearly on the bright side, they ain't going for bass. This is an outdoor speaker. They're making their niche about outdoors, although the Wild box, wasn't it? That was pretty decent indoors, but certainly the lantern that I did for Mifa outdoors, and that is clearly 200 hertz and down. I know it's a little speaker, but still 200 hertz and down. There's no bass there. That is well tailed off, and that's an outdoor tuning. That's an outdoor tuning along, and that upward slant. normally you're getting an in-room response of a downward slant. So it's completely opposite. Well, in terms of the frequency response, you'd want it to be flat. In room, it tends to be sloped down. When it's as bright as that, as steep as that going up, that's a bright old sound. All kind of relying on this 4 kilohertz peak, which is just on the border of the high end of the mids, and the beginning, say 4 to 6 kilohertz, is where you'd get your presence region. So, you know, so it's still a bit in your face. They're certainly putting a lot of their eggs in that basket to rely on that 4 kilohertz peak, going outdoors to retain some of that clarity and to sound clear, even if it's lying on its back just like that. As I said, the fairest way I think of recording these is at 45 degrees because it's midway between that and that. Just to give you an idea of what it's going to sound like, it will be, just know, if you have this directly on axis, it's going to sound a bit brighter, and if you have it directly on its back and you're a bit away from it, it's going to sound a bit more rolled off in the highs. So start at low volume, obviously 10 watts, we ain't going to be knocking down walls, but still low volume listening, around 35%. I'm going to compare it to the Tribit Stormbox Micro 2 because the guts of the Micro 2 is very much the same as the guts on the Mifa Tango.
Tell me what's been going on. Tell me what's been going on. Won't you tell me now. You never answer when I call, locked in the room and so it don't. Tell me what's been going on. Tell me what's been going on. I feel you getting loud. I feel you turning up. I feel it in your eyes when you say there's nothing wrong. There's something so subliminal. So subliminal. I feel that your heart shake whenever you talk. You stare into space like you're lost in your thoughts, surrounded by big walls. Tell me what's been going on.
Low volume listening, and they seem to be hinged when compared to each other around the 1 kilohertz mark, with a downward tilt for the Micro 2 and an upward tilt for the Tango, which means it's sounding quite bright on the Mifa Tango and it's sounding fuller, certainly in the bass on the Micro 2, but by comparison, slightly muddy, not quite as clear.
So I'm saying the guts is about the same, but you can see the tuning is very, very different, even though similar in terms of the hardware from the audio point of view. And so we've got a full bass. I mean, it's incredible, really, what the Tribit Stormbox Micro can do in something that size. But in an AB, you can clearly hear, probably you could get them to be tuned pretty similar, but they've gone for bass. They've gone, well, it's, you know, within reason for this size of speaker. So we don't have the 200 hertz roll off. And actually, if you actually look at the slope, it's a downward slope for the Micro 2, and it's an upward slope with a 200 hertz bass cut off. That's outdoor. Basically, you could say you get both speakers, and then you've got an indoor tuning and an outdoor tuning. It's like the speaker having one tuning, except you don't have all the other functionality on here. But that's really the main difference, is they've tuned that to be more full and a more of an indoor kind of listen, and that's a pure outdoor tuning. You know, it's not brilliant indoors because of that, but it's going to carry, and you're going to hear more of it. It's going to battle the environmental noise much better than the Micro 2 when it's outdoors with that tuning. So we've got warmer, more full in the bass, but compared to the Tango, a little bit muffled in those highs, whereas that's bass light, but brighter, albeit a bit thinner in sounding. So I think it's a draw, and it's going to come down to taste or whether you are indeed indoors or outdoors. So we can push these speakers to louder volumes, about 65% on the Tango. It's going to be about 70%, so it's going a bit louder at these volumes. We've had to go to 70% to match 65% on the Micro 2.
same story as at lower volumes, except that the differences between bass and the highs are not as pronounced as at the lower volumes, but we still have fuller, deeper bass on the Micro 2 with a brighter, thinner sound on the Mifa Tango. But it's even closer now in the highs, which means you'll be more aware of the differences in the bass now than you were at the lower volumes.
It's a bit more clear cut now at these volumes. It's very much indoor versus outdoor, how you're going to use it. The differences between the bass and the highs are still there as at the 35% volume, but the difference in the highs is less so now, as that becomes a bit smoother, a bit more obvious in the bass. And because of that, the differences that you hear now are more likely to be that rolled off bass, you know, that ain't there below 200 hertz. I mean, 200 hertz is quite high, even for upper bass. But there is, you know, still some kick because there's some upper bass there. But it's very much, whereas I said before it was a draw, and could be a matter of taste for low volume, because the clarity you get from that may be exactly what you want at low volume. But at these volumes, you got a warm, smoother, probably more natural sounding speaker in the Micro 2, well suited to indoor. Whereas we got a much clearer, but you know, an obvious 4 kilohertz peak, an obvious lack of bass, and it makes it sound a bit brittle and thin. Not terrible sounding, but clearly outdoor versus indoor kind of tuning. It's not a speaker you're going to really want to get if you're going to push those sort of volumes and you're only going to use it indoor. This is a camping speaker, exactly how it was designed for. So maximum volume, what is the headroom? Both 10 watts on paper. What do we actually get?
Really, these two speakers have very similar headroom, but the difference is the Micro 2 is holding on to a tad more bass, and that's going to cost it in the terms of the highs. So overall, the Mifa Tango, it goes louder, it sounds clearer, it sounds a bit more dynamic at maximum volume, but as at all volumes, it's bass light with a roll-off from 250 hertz. Same roll-off on the Micro 2, except that it holds on to more bass after that point, which means overall, the Tango is nearly 3 decibels louder, and that's like going twice as loud. It's the same story in peak, but if we only compare the bass, then the Micro 2 still wins out.
It goes louder. If it's all about which is the loudest, the Tango goes louder, but it's all about the difference in tuning. Hardware seems almost identical, and you could see how they would tune either one of these to sound like the other one. But here, they're keeping more bass on the Micro 2, which means they can't push the mids and the highs, so that it's losing out in volume. Here they're not trying to put, although it's closer now in the bass, they're not holding on to anything, you know, it certainly didn't have anything to start with under 200 hertz, and they can push those highs, and it's got that 4 kilohertz peak anyway, which is where a lot of its volume is coming from. And so the real difference is the tuning. That's going to go louder. Is that what you want? Well, it will go louder. It's tuned to be that way. It's certainly got more impact. So, as I've been basically saying all along, what have you been saying? Well, why have you only skipped to this part of the video? You would have known that I've been saying. We basically got the same speaker with an indoor mode and an outdoor mode, if you see what I'm saying, except that this has got loads of other functionality and it's probably twice the price. It is about twice the price, but what is the prices? 57 quid versus 88. So not quite twice the price, or $54 versus $111, and that is twice the price. But you can see it basically, depending where you get it, and if you catch a deal, about twice the price, but it's about all the other functionality, and it will probably sound to you unless you're right up to the speaker, probably sound to you better outdoors than the Stormbox Micro 2. Do you remember what I said right at the beginning of the video? Did you say, please like and subscribe? Oh, no, I forgot to say that, but please like and subscribe. So it makes any difference, but every other video does it. I said it's not saying I was ever into, but there you go. I just threw one out. But I did say it does up to 100 plus, or it can do 2 true wireless stereo pairing. So I can't leave without demonstrating what happens if you buy not 1, but 2. Nick said 2 Mifa Tango speakers. It's a comparison. I'm going to start off with how they sound, literally both at 50% and going from 1 to 2, and then I'm going to normalize the stereo pair. So the loudness is the same, and you just hear the difference between having a pair or having a single Mifa Tango.
I just want to give this thing. Can you take it home? 'Cause we ain't seen what this could be. Quit playing games, just come in.
Essentially, you can get 6 decibels because we've doubled the size of the driver, we've doubled the amount of power. But life ain't always like that. But clearly, you know, you didn't need me to tell you. You have 2 separated or 1 like that, it sounds much better. Does it sound twice as good? Yeah, probably. So that's something to think about. You also get a little bit more bass reinforcement, so it sounds a little bit better in the bass. Not that anything magical has happened. It's just physics and stuff like that. So even if you play them at the same volume, you can hear it's still nice to have. It's more open, it's more airy, and there's some sort of imaging going on where you don't have with one speaker. So does it sound much better? Shock horror! Here is the breaking news. It sounds better when you got 2 of them than when you had 1 of them. But sometimes, hey ho, some speakers don't do magical things. I'm not saying this is magical, but it's what you'd expect buying a second one. Some of them have weird processing, and I can't remember off the top of my head which ones I'm talking about, but I've had that in the past where actually it doesn't do what you would hope and it should do because of how heavily processed these are and what they do when they're being paired together. So we'll give you the specs. I've said they're basically the same speaker with an indoor tuning and outdoor tuning, apart from all the other things that are going on that you're paying for in the price by paying twice the price. But in complete comparison, one is made in America and one is made at no, I caught you out. Both made in.
It comes from China.
China. Already told you one's about twice the price as the other, about £57, $54, £88, $111, but it's on, I can only see it at the moment on AliExpress. In terms of the battery, slightly better actually, and you would hope so because it's got a torch, so if you really want that functionality, especially while you're playing music. But not by much, 18.25 watt hours versus 16.9 watt hours. But that's a decent sized battery for a speaker like that. Of course, they both do SBC. They are both Bluetooth 5.3. They both do stereo pairing, but you can do up to 100 that you can't do with the Micro 2. USB-C connections on both of them. Both can be used as a power bank. Only the Mifa Tango will give you the ability to play straight off the device itself because it has a micro SD card slot, both 10 watts. I'm not sure what the charging is, the input charging rate for the Micro 2 is, but I know that's 5 volts, 3 amps, and that's 15 watts, and that's pretty good. It is heavier. It's 387 grams versus 310 grams. Neither of them will float, but they're both IP67. They both claim 70 to 20 kilohertz as the frequency response, but we don't take any notice of that, especially if it doesn't even tell you what dB range they're talking about, or even what smoothing. So what he said, because I measured it, a 43 millimeter with 2 passive radiators, and the headlines, I don't know, I haven't opened that up. They say 48 millimeter, but there's so many creative ways you can measure driver to make it sound bigger. I don't know if that's the case. Just know on paper they're claiming that's a slightly big driver than the one on the Mifa Tango. We do have on the Micro 2 neodymium magnets. They don't claim that for the Mifa Tango. In terms of streaming, neither of them are really going to cut the mustard, but the Tango was better at 116 milliseconds streaming YouTube, and it was 250 milliseconds for the Micro 2. So that's really poor. And you could, yeah, if you're out camping, you'd probably get away with that as being acceptable at 116 milliseconds. There's an app for the Tribit Micro 2, and it's got EQ and stuff like that. There's no app for the Mifa, so you can't change it. You can't inherently change the EQ, but of course you can use third-party apps or your streaming apps and stuff like that. But I'm talking about in the app themselves. And I have to point out, and I've pointed out before, why is that important? Well, all these speakers can be very prone. Look, they're all being pushed already in DSP. You can get any bass out of these speakers without pushing the DSP. You start pushing your own third-party EQ, it's very easy to push it too far and knacker it. I know there's limiters and stuff in that, but it's quite easy to do. However, when there's an app with EQ, it's designed to work within the limits of that speaker, and it will do creative things. Whereas, so a third-party app will be it will say, you're pushing it 2 dB, you are pushing it 2 dB. What you will find when you're using in-app EQ, it may be 2 dB, say at 50%, but then it'll go 1 dB, and then by the time you hit maximum headroom, you haven't pushed it at all. In other words, it's a safe EQ to use. These are Bluetooth speakers with a lot of DSP, and that's why I don't do any third-party software testing. Someone's going to knacker their speaker, I know that, but it's safe when it's in-app. That's been my overview of the Mifa Tango. About 80 quid, and they sent 3 of them. That's blinking good. Maybe we'll have to do a takeaway. Let's see what the interest is in this video, and then I'll have to think about how we do the takeaway. Certainly we'll do one takeaway, because 3 of them ain't going to... I mean, 2 of them, yeah, I'll probably keep that. But the third one will be of not much use. I'll have to sort out in my head when we work out how we're going to do that. But again, it seems a reasonably decent product for I Don't Go Camping. A lot of you was a lot happier about the Mifa Lantern than I was ever expecting you to be. Well, when I say happier, excited. It is something that a lot of you use, and obviously they know their niche. And so look, if I go away, I'm sitting in a nice hotel room. I don't go camping, and I'm not digging a hole in the ground for you know what. But there you go. If that's where you're going, that seems to me, and I'm not an expert, as a decent option for some audio on the move when you go camping, and retaining a lot of other functionality. Hope you got something out of this video, and I hope to see you again.
What the was that?
It comes from China.
My speaker's got deep bass, balanced mids, and a bright high.
Yes, mine sounds exactly the same.